He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
No mai whakarongo mai ki te aotai whenua. Welcome to Country Life. I'm Janina Schwanneker.
G'day, lovely to have your company. I'm Duncan Smith.
Today, we hear from a recent grad whose farming journey started helping out at his grandparents' lifestyle block near Kawhia.
Later, we're in a honey shed on the Coromandel Peninsula with the Mackenzies, among New Zealand's few organic honey producers.
And I'm at a farm near Auckland where running livestock under solar panels has helped make the business more profitable, part of a growing trend of agrivoltaics.
But first, an update on how farmers in the Tasman district are doing after two big deluges recently. Our producer Cosmo Kentish-Barnes met a few in the Motueka River Valley just as the second storm was about to hit, and we thought we'd give you an update on how they're going.
The dairy farmer at Atapo, Kevin Freeman, was busy wrangling an early calf when I called, and he reckons he only has a few days before he gets really busy with calving. He says the second event wasn't as bad as he was expecting, although some big trees came down due to the strong winds and soggy ground. Paddocks flooded again, and he had to spend another day and a half on the digger when the stop bank broke. He's spent 4 days fixing up fences, and there's still a few kilometres to go. And on top of that, there are paddocks to clear of gravel and debris. But he's feeling okay, and he says the worst part was the waiting. He still needs to count the cost, but he reckons it'll be in the 3 figures.
Remember Laura Fry, the volunteer firefighter from Tapuera, who farms near Motupiko? She says they also fared better the second time around, but there was water and silt through the yard and a couple more deposits of debris. Clean-up will be a long process for the farm, and their future growing crops looks very uncertain. She says local forestry blocks also took a hammering, and it looked like a tornado had swept through the hills. There was a wee bright spot though, a surprise couple of care packages from a few companies they work for. Laura says it shows the resilience and generosity of the rural community. Let's hope the rains forecast for next week don't hamper the clean-up efforts.
Now turning to a wrap of what's been making headlines on the rural news desk this week, the head of Fonterra says the cooperative cannot and will not have different butter prices for local and overseas customers. The price of the household staple has soared by nearly 50%, and milk and cheese have also recorded steep price increases amid global demand. The cost of butter was among topics of discussion at Miles Hurrell's meeting with the Finance Minister Nicola Willis this week. He told the media he sympathised with households feeling the pinch, but he also sympathised with farmers.
I wouldn't say let down, and they understand the role that they play in the fabric of New Zealand as well. As I say, they're important parts of rural New Zealand. So I wouldn't say let down. There is an element of disappointment because they feel they're doing some pretty good stuff on farm, and I'd advocate for the work that they do. And so some of the commentary that comes back is a little bit unfounded. They know what they're good at and what they do very well, and we are very proud of them.
Miles Hurrell says roughly 80% of the supermarket shelf price for butter was determined by the international market.
The Agriculture Minister has apologised to New Zealand's top beef exporters for extra costs they are likely to face due to new anti-deforestation rules for European Union imports. From the end of the year, those sending off agricultural products to EU countries will have to prove the goods have not come from land that was recently deforested. Despite opposition from many corners, including France, the European Union deforestation regulation appears to be going ahead. The Minister, Todd McClay, told the red meat sector conference in Christchurch, Ōtautahi, companies should get prepared.
I'm so very sorry this cost has been put upon you because in my view it is unnecessary, and since we came to government I have consistently said to the European Union we have standards the equivalent to yours if not higher. You should not be putting costs upon every single producer in New Zealand, and we have been looking for ways to find exemptions. Compared to some countries of the world, they have nothing to worry about in New Zealand. You're not allowed to deforest native forests in New Zealand.
Federated farmers won't be appealing a finding that major banks are not acting as a cartel in efforts to push down on-farm greenhouse gas emissions. The Commerce Commission found there was no evidence to support the lobby group's complaint about banks in the Net Zero Banking Alliance. The regulator says an investigation shows the banks are making their own decisions and found no evidence of unlawful coordination of lending policies. Here's Federated Farmers banking spokesman Mark Hooper.
The reason that we made the submission in the first place was that, we felt that there had been some collusion and that there was a sort of collective agreement that would have limited farmers' choice. So in that sense, we're disappointed, but we still think it was the right course of action to go down. I think really it comes back to what our main concern and focus of the whole attention is that banks stick to their core role of lending money based on real risk considerations and not indulging really in the climate change space.
A new Waikato medical school set to open in 3 years' time is expected to help ease the rural doctor shortage and help the strained workforce. Cabinet has given the green light to the Waikato Medical School, confirming $82 million will come from taxpayers and the remaining $150 million from the university. Fiona Bolden of the Rural Health Network, Hauora Tai Whenua, says this optimism it will help with the rural GP shortage, although she says more rural doctors are needed now.
Rural origin students who are trained rurally and who are trained by rural health professionals are 6 times more likely to work rurally than if that doesn't happen. And I think that this gives a chance for those people who may be more diverse and done other degrees, first of all, to find a way to get through medical school.
Police are warning farmers about calf rustlers after more than 60 hand-reared weaner calves worth about $65,000 were stolen. The calves were taken late Sunday or early Monday from a paddock bordering State Highway 2 near Dannevirke. Honey producers have voted to keep Apiculture New Zealand going amid calls for a more united voice for the bee industry. It's estimated around 60% of the country's beekeepers are not affiliated with the group. Apiculture New Zealand's chief executive, Karen Koss, says they'll meet members face-to-face to tackle ongoing issues around organisational and financial structure.
A cool store developed by one of the country's largest apple exporters is expected to help extend the shelf life of the fruit headed overseas. Advanced automation at Mr Apple's $24 million facility in Hastings is expected to get fresher apples onto ships at the port. Mr Apple exports nearly 80% of its fruit to more than 33 countries. And that's the rural news for this week.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
Our guest this week is a recent graduate from Lincoln University, originally from Waikato. He hopes to combine his knowledge of agribusiness into ao Māori to act as a bridge between industry and tangata whenua. I went to meet him at the place where his love of rural life began.
Ko Harris Moana tōku ingoa, hiria no o ngā iwi o Manipoto me Waikato. My name's Harris Moana. I'm from small places called Kawhia and Huntly, currently studying.
And we hear on a special bit of whenua that your family's had a connection to for quite a long time, and this sparked your love of the primary sector and kind of led to where you are today. Can you tell me about the land we're on now?
We're out in Kawhia. This is where our marae is, and it was the place where we spent a lot of our upbringing, a lot of our childhood. Our grandparents lived out here. They have a small block, and my cousins and I would always be out here every school holidays, helping out on the farm, helping out, just being around our grandparents and being out on the land.
What sort of stuff would they have you do helping out on the farm?
So my koro and them had pigs and a few sheep and cattle, but most of the time our job was just be helping out feeding the sheep, help feeding the pigs, bit of fencing work, just a bit of whatever else needed to be on the job. But it was kind of being on with them and also helping out whenever there'd be people coming over the marae. We were lucky to have a bit of both worlds on our upbringing out here. We had a lot of family that would always come out, so it was a good place for us to meet all of them and just be around that whole lifestyle of rural living, I guess.
And obviously that led you down to study at Lincoln. Can you tell me a little bit about your time there and what you learned?
Studied a Bachelor of Agriculture Science down there. I guess, the love of agriculture came from being out in Kawhia, and then the science aspect kind of came in my later years in school. Doing a BA Sci was where I saw myself going. From that whole experience, I've really learned a lot more about the land. We didn't live on a farm growing up while being at school, but now I have a better understanding of how farmers work, of why they do what they do, for the stock, for the land, for the soils, all that kind of thing. And overall, it's just a great experience of getting further into the sector and seeing where I wanted to end up.
It sounds like you got a good chance to learn some of that on-farm practical stuff. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the different places you worked as well?
Yes, first year I was in a little place called Pihiri, which is just out of Gisborne, a sheep and beef farm, and that kind of being down there was a real eye-opening experience for me on lifestyle of a sheep and beef farm. You know how everything ran. Being a summer student, they take care of you, but you're there to work, which is good because you get to see the whole operations of everything going on. It's not like you've
kind of got like a bird's eye view of the operation. You're not.
Yeah, you get to see everything on the farm, which is cool. You get to be really hands-on. See, that was down in Gisborne. The following summer, I was lucky enough to get an internship with Ag Research down in Dunedin within their dairy team in Invermay. That was a real cool experience. It really opened my eyes into the world of science and how research affects the industry and can influence the industry for the better. So yeah, that was a really cool time. I had a small project that I had got to work on, but also there was a way of getting more, I guess, young Māori students an insight into the industry to see if that was for them. So that was really cool down there. Really enjoyed that. From there, I spent a summer in Opotiki on a dairy farm, and that was my first taste into the dairy industry.
In terms of your experiences, like finish your bachelor's at Lincoln and you're continuing study, but now you're going down a slightly different path and exploring another subject that's really important to you, building your reo, and can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I thought, from what I've seen, it's hard to go from working back to studying. So I thought, while I'm young, while I've been in the education groove, I'll stay studying for a bit longer. So this year I'm doing a full immersion reo course at Te Wānanga Takiura, which is based in Auckland. It's really cool. It's something I've really wanted to do for a long time. We grew up within Te Ao Māori, engari we didn't learn the reo, which is all good, everyone had their own things. My parents saw us go, well, that was the pathway they set for us to go.
And it's something I suppose you want to bring into the agri space where you end up is that reo and that tikanga Māori, te ao Māori is a really valuable asset, I suppose, as well. Where do you think you kind of might end up?
There's a lot of stern conversations going on between the agriculture sector or the whole farming sector and iwi Māori throughout the country. I hopefully see myself being a bit of a bridge between both, because it's both things that I'm passionate about. I really enjoy being on farm. I really enjoy being within the industry, but I'm a Māori person. That's just who I am. So I'd like to see myself being a connector between both industries, to work together for the betterment of both, because farming's massive within New Zealand, but so is the presence of iwi Māori throughout the country. And as you see, there's a lot of Māori owned farms. There's a lot of our whānau that work on farms. However, the effect that's having on our whenua, on our taiao, on our waterways, on our moana, and I guess the current path that we're heading on, are we going to be able to go floundering in 100 years and there'll still be the same amount of flounder, or are we still able to go pick up watercress from our streams in 100 years' time, or is the impacts of what we're doing today going to limit that in the future? I guess that's kind of the big question around farming and the effects it'll have on our taiao.
Would you have any advice for people in who just might be starting out and might come from similar backgrounds as you, that didn't grow up on a big farm or anything like that, but they're interested in entering the industry?
Yeah, just get involved, eh? It's something that really connects you back to how our tupuna lived. They were people from the land. We lived off the land, and if your upbringing wasn't on a farm, that doesn't limit you to being able to get into the industry. I'd love to see more young Māori people within the industry making changes for the better. I think that's something that's missing. If one person can get in there to show that it's possible. Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't matter what you want to do, if it's farming or whatever. As long as you know what you want to do and you know where you want to go, then you shouldn't really let anyone else's thoughts stop you from achieving that.
It's good advice. That was Harris Moana I was speaking to on his whānau's whenua near Kāwhia.
Now we're taking you to a honey shed on the Coromandel Peninsula to meet Shayne and Elizabeth Mackenzie of Woodlands Organic Honey. They run one of only a handful of organic honey ventures in New Zealand and won 2 gold medals and 1 silver this year at the Outstanding Food Producer Awards. Producer Sally Round visited them in the autumn. The harvest was over, but there was still plenty of work to do.
This is where all the honey is kept. We're coming into the packing shed here at Woodlands Organic Honey. Oh, I can already smell the honey. Oh, yes. Beautiful. So we're up in our honey packing shed, which is in Colville, which is a wee town north of Coromandel town. Yeah, top of the Coromandel Peninsula, really. The view's nice.
There goes the perfect amount of honey in the pot.
Honey into the jar.
251 grams to be perfect.
And then I will screw on the lid.
Yes, very technical stuff here. At some point I realised I'd put on 500,000 pots of honey by hand, and I was like, that's quite a lot of lids, isn't it? And you think about 500,000, you don't want to do them all at once.
Now, Shayne, you're not normally sitting here on a stool filling pots of honey, are you?
Quite often someone else does that and I put the lids on, yes.
But you're outside dealing with the bees, are you?
We do everything. So yeah, we've just finished rearing a whole lot of queens for our operation. So that's something we do, just usually starts about the start of February and try to get it finished before the end of March. Ideally earlier the better, but the weather's been real good for us this year. So yeah, timing's everything. Big long sunny days is what you want when those queens come out, and rearing queens is definitely one of the more challenging beekeeping jobs.
Tell us why you need to rear queens.
It just basically, with all of the stresses that come upon the hive through their existence and treatments that we have to use, it is the best thing to requeen the hives. Otherwise, often the queen will fail at a bad time, and then you'll end up with a drone-laying hive. Or something like it, and yeah, then the hive's pretty much it's a death sentence for them. The male bees need help to get out of the cells, so at some point you come along to a drone laying hive and there's a whole lot of male bees just stuck in the cells, really, because if they get too weak and there's not enough help to get out, that's what happens. So that's not a good sight. But yet also to make new hives, if you want to make a few new hives, which you have to, because ultimately with any livestock, not everything survives. So if you don't want to go backwards, you have to make some more to stay on the level, or to move ahead slightly if you can. Yeah, we've got a bit to do. It's going to be a long day.
But it's a good day.
No, that's right.
It's a good day.
The hat on a sunny day.
Yeah, beautiful weather. How far afield are your hives?
Well, we travel to the end of the most northern parts of the Coromandel, which is sort of, east coast to west coast, and yeah, we don't really travel that much further than that. We've always just liked to stay local, and it makes it easier for managing your bees if you can keep an eye on the weather, really, wake up day to day and understand what's happening around your bees. It's going to help you manage them, things change quite quickly.
What sort of land is it that they're on?
We're on a lot of privately owned farmlands, local farmers around here and landowners, and yeah, so some of them are working farms and some of them are just 1,000-acre blocks, and also on local community lands. There's a number of communities that we're on, and in some cases it works for them. We help to pollinate their orchards and we give them some honey, so that's good. We are lucky to have a lot of support from the local people, really.
And what about what they forage on? What's special up here in the northern Coromandel?
Well, the gorse. The gorse is phenomenal. Yeah, we got heaps of it. And they love it. So yeah, you'd rather the bees getting pollen than cutting it. Yeah, they love the pollen. It's hard to look at a gorse bush the same when you don't want to be pricked by it, nor do you want to cut it, but the bees love it. So yeah, it's a funny thing, that, isn't it?
Imagine it's disappearing though, with all the native bush coming away.
Yeah, that's fair to say. It's fair to say that the landscape's changed over the last 25 years since we sort of started doing this, or it's even longer than that. Quite a lot changes. It's pretty much 30 years since I first went out with Don Sutherland Harvesting, who was the original owner of the bees around here. And so we did 2 seasons of that. I remember it. He had some quite vicious bees, and I was quite young, and I didn't really go that well getting stung. I swelled up pretty bad. I can tell you that. And so I remember I used to put on this set of overalls, like this orange set, and then I'd put on what is called a half veil, which is like a top half of a bee suit, and then I'd put on a full bee suit over the top of that, and I think a bit of tape as well, and that would stop John's bees getting you. But I'd like to think we've tamed the bees a little bit by breeding some slightly kinder ones that you don't quite need as much. And I think it was pretty hot in all those gears from memory, so yeah.
What made you want to get into the bee business? Because you were working in a mill before.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, that was a part-time summer job when I started with Don. So I did a couple of seasons when I was about 15 and 16 when I was still at school. And then I went and did some tech stuff and electronic engineering, electrical engineering, and then I came back and worked at the local timber yard here with a man named Colin Macbeth, who was always an entrepreneurial type, and he'd probably had enough of working for someone else and wanted to do something creative, and he decided to buy the bee business off Don Sutherland. And at the time it was a fairly small operation, just had one truck, some pretty old equipment. Yeah, we used to take the bees pollinating as well. So I remember my first adventures with Don was going on a pollination trip to Kadikadi with our bees from the Coromandel, which was a interesting experience, and pretty much the last time I did that. and Colin, well, it's a lot of effort travelling that far at night with bees and getting up and looking after them when they're 3 hours away. And then, I think Colin came along and did one trip like that, and he said, "No, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to do something different." And he must have thought, "How can I do something different?" And he decided to go organic. Him and his wife Delcy. They decided, let's buy these bees and we'll go certified organic through BioGrow. So they must have applied and filled out all the necessary paperwork and maps and data, and started running an organic bee operation and created their own label called Woodlands, and off they went. Found some international markets with a bit of help from Binny Brown. It's in Singapore and Malaysia and Canada and places like that. And
do you know how many organic honey producers there are in New Zealand?
I don't know offhand, but it's not a huge amount. It was extremely challenging when the Varroa came. Colin was in business with 2 other people at the time, and I think both of them did give up. A lot of people left when the Varroa came. It was extremely challenging to manage the Varroa with organic treatments. Yes,
because those would be synthetic treatments on the whole, would they? And being organic, that wouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, that's right. So, it was only in an emergency you could use that. If, you'd have like a hospital side, if things went really pear-shaped, you might use 1 or 2 of those. But really it was a big game of trying lots of treatments. I remember we started with formic acid, and we made up these big pads and treated away with that. It was pretty full on. And we used Epilife VAR and Timer VAR and ApiGuard and all sorts of different treatments along the way.
These are allowed under?
Yeah, they're all organic treatments. So oxalic acid was always a common one that was known as well, but I hadn't used that till more recently. That's where we've ended up these days with these paper cardboard strips infused with a mixture of oxalic acid and glycerine. So they seem to be working quite well. That's probably the best treatment we've come across. So that's been a bit of a revolution in the last few years. So things have been evolving, but yeah.
And how does it work in the organic honey business? I mean, how do you maintain an organic status when basically you're in the wild?
It's a fairly long audit. There's a lot of questions. It comes back to some basic things like just using untreated pine wood or macrocarpa and, paraffin wax dipping, and not taking your hives to pollination. That was one of the things you can't do, or really taking your hives anywhere out of the area, like not moving them to other locations.
Locations need to be outside a certain area where there might be sprays?
Yeah, so you have to be a long way from any heavy agriculture or even a large town. So I think that a town of 300, you've got to be less than that to be anywhere near it. So that works all right for our little places. We also have to do a multi-residue test at the end of the year. So I'm not sure if it's every year, it might be second or third year, and then they send it away for a multi-residue test for 250 different residues or something, and we've got nil every time, so that's good. And also just about leaving honey on the hives, that's part of the gig. We have to leave food for the bees, that's a big deal. basically leaving lots of honey, treating with organic treatments, and in an area miles from any agricultural spraying, is pretty good. But this is a good remote little area where, the farming's kept pretty quiet, really. It's all pretty slow and pretty cruisy, and a lot of people don't really like spraying too much, really. So that works well for us.
What are the bees doing?
Building down for winter, really. It's autumn, they're starting to, find their last bits of foraging flowers around. So, as those disappear, the bees do tend to start getting a bit more, frenzied. Rain last night, which washes the nectar out, so they're all just, looking for a food source, really. Flying around until they can, find some nectar to take back to the hive.
Elizabeth, are you from the Coromandel yourself? Tell me a little bit about your story.
So I grew up in the Wairarapa, so a wee place between Paetua and Ikatahuna. I got an agricultural science degree, and after that I'd had enough of being too close to town and just wanted to spend some time on the hills with my dogs. So I applied for a few jobs and I got one at Port Jackson.
That's north of here.
Yes, it's about an hour north still.
So you were a shepherd?
Yep, so I worked there for a couple of years, which was great. It was a beautiful place. Like you say, very remote. But no, so I was there, and then my boss was having his 40th birthday one Labour weekend, and a really big party, and he'd been telling me, there'll be a couple of single blokes there, and Shayne was there and played in his band, and that was sort of that. I hit my head at work, actually, and I had a head injury. So I couldn't really even look after myself up there, so I moved down to Culver with Shayne. And Shayne took care of me, really.
She had no choice to move in. God's will was strong on that day. Who knows?
So
and so that was your move into the honey business.
Pretty well. Shayne needed some help with the computer side of things, the technology side of things. A lot of it's gone that way.
What do you mean?
You've got lots of strong suits, mate, but I'm not sure that paper
Techo
works.
ass, mate. Techo wizzo.
One of them. But from uni I had some of those skills, and it all just sort of.
So what's your role in the business? Mostly the admin side? Or do you get out there as well in your bee suit?
Not so much anymore. I did a little bit, but I've sort of taken over all the marketing, exports, sales, the books, social media. When you're on your own business, you fill all of those roles.
So it has been a turbulent time in the honey industry. How have you managed to survive?
Well, fortunately, when times were good, we didn't just buy a Ferrari, because that wouldn't have worked out. No, so the reality of it is we just sort of made some other investments that were, because things were good for quite a long time, and we did make money, and that was good. And so we bought some land and different things like that, and had a little bit of, backup, because I do know that the business can be up and down enormous amounts. I used to think it could be plus or minus 60%, but after the other year when we got 8% of a crop, I guess that means you can be plus or minus 92%. So that's a lot to manage on a hard year. So we just found ways to raise capital and keep going, really.
What is the outlook?
I think it's starting to look a bit more positive. It's still going to be a slow. The hive numbers have about halved in the last few years, and this year's national crop is just below average, there has not been as much honey produced, so that helps start even out the supply and demand. So I guess we just have to get back to a place where there's more of a level playing field.
Shayne and Elizabeth Mackenzie of Woodlands Organic Honey at their honey shed on the Coromandel Peninsula. Elizabeth says the bees are fairly quiet at the moment, waiting for the spring flowers and temperatures before they get busy preparing for the honey flows. The couple have launched a range of organic Rewa and Kānaka honeys alongside their Mānaka varieties. That story produced by Sally Round.
Kia ora, I'm Andy Blair from Upflow. We're trying to create feed from carbon dioxide and methane to feed your stock. You're listening to Country Life on RNZ National.
Our next couple traded up the bustling city lights of Europe for thousands of solar panels on the family farm south of Auckland. About 18 months ago, Nigel and Merrin Upchurch added a solar farm to their operation at Waiuku. with young cattle and pigs grazing beneath. It's feeding time at Waitangi Farm near Waiuku, about an hour south of Auckland. 6 hungry piglets are ready for kai.
We normally feed the piglets, let them have something to eat, and then the mum can enjoy her meal in peace before we release them.
That's very fair.
Yeah, it's your breakfast. Come on, mate.
How old are these wee ones?
These guys are about 5 weeks old now. 6 weeks old.
Getting quite big.
So they're going to be weaned. They're being in the process of being weaned. They'll be going off to their new homes next weekend. So we just sell them off to other farmers and livestock blockers who are looking to raise them on for the freezer. Some of them, if they're lucky, will go on to be breeding animals. We've got registered purebred Berkshires, then the Devon orchard pigs or the large blacks, as they're known. Yeah.
Is there a reason you've chosen those 2 particular breeds as well? Or?
Well, there was a huge demand for the Berkshires because they got a good rep. They're known as the Wagyu of pork in Japan. They're really big as well. And they are beautiful meat, like nicely marbled. Yeah, delicious, quite frankly.
The pigs are just a small part of life on the 48-hectare farm for Nigel and Merrin Upchurch, who traded up city life for Merrin's family farm 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, we got started with pigs because Merrin's mum, Judy, had planted a lot of fruit and nut trees around the place, and we weren't really capitalising them on a commercial perspective, so it made a lot of sense to run pigs under the trees during the autumn months, and we just found it worked really well with the space, so they can hoover up all that excess windfall produce and make some pretty delicious pork, quite frankly.
We have chestnut trees, so they fatten up really nicely in autumn on the chestnuts. We don't have to feed them anything at that time of year, around February through to
they
April.
They just find it themselves and
they
forage.
Yep. Quite a few apple trees as well, so we make our own cider. But yeah, they're good to occasionally run the pigs under the apple trees. So we just find it's a good balance for the property. We keep the pigs a bit closer in, sort of central to the main operation, and then the beef a bit further out. Yeah.
And there's nothing better than your own pork. Once you taste pork that's fattened on chestnuts and free range like this, it's a completely different type of meat.
And I suppose, a lot of New Zealanders are used to imported pork because that's mostly what you can find at the supermarkets as well.
The domestic pork industry has taken a hammering because it's quite cheap to import pork, and some of it's not bred to the same standards in terms of animal welfare.
We've got a purebred Berkshire, Vincent. We've had him for about 5 years now, so it's just time to start thinking about succession plans. We're going to we've got 5 breeding sows, a mixture of the Devons and the Berkshires. We will keep a few of their daughters and roll Vinny over eventually, and he's going to be replaced by little Hugo here, who's a Wessex Saddleback Hampshire cross. So we're keeping with that heritage breeds, but mixing it up a little bit now this time. See how he goes for us. He's a sweetheart though. He likes a good belly scratch already, which is really nice.
We tend to go for dark pigs so they don't get sunburnt because we're an outdoor operation.
The pigs dine well, enjoying a mix of grass, fruit and nuts from trees on the farm, as well as food scraps from a thrice weekly run to the local supermarket. Helping with the feeding today are temporary farm workers, or woofers, Tommy and Tilly.
The more that we've spent time with them, the more they've got used to us, and I've grown a bit attached accidentally, especially to the little runt there.
The really little one at the back.
Yeah.
Trying to make sure he or she gets extra feed and things like that.
Yeah. Give him all the bananas.
Have you guys been on farms before? Is this your kind of first experience up and close?
Yeah, sort of a big farm. I mean, I grew up on land, but we never had any animals or anything, so it is cool to actually experience.
What about for you, Tilly?
Yeah, I mean, I've grown up in a city, so for me coming here is just a massive breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
It's so nice to just spend time with the animals and then go out, and we've been planting native trees and stuff, and it's just such a rewarding job. Yeah, I'm definitely going to miss it. It's actually our last day today, so I'm going to soak it all in.
It'll be cool to come back hopefully in a few years and see the little forest that we built and all that sort of thing.
A desire to be outside and working with animals was also part of the appeal for Nigel and Merrin in coming home.
So we were both living in Europe. We were living in Amsterdam for 7 years. Merrin was doing her master's and then her doctorate in freshwater ecology, and I was working as a designer and 3D animator, kind of in the ad industry. So yeah, a bit of a change moving home from Amsterdam to Waiuku pig farmer.
What about for you, Merrin? I suppose you get to kind of put in practice
I
what
married
you...
the farm girl.
Yeah, this farm was where I grew up, so it was real coming home for me. When we were living in Europe, in Amsterdam, I really missed the animals and being outside, and there were a lot of good benefits to being over there, but coming back was really great. And for me, the farm is a constant place for me it's a classroom for me to continuously learn. So I work with farmers and I have my own consultancy, and I like to try things here to see how it works in practice, and it gives you a much deeper appreciation for what sits behind actions around water quality enhancement and soil health, and actually having a functional farm that produces an income.
I can see all of the flax bushes and other native plantings around what I assume are kind of parts of the boundary, or where some of those waterways are. They're
actually just for livestock health, so they're really good for shelter, and they're quite good for rumen development in young cattle. They're actually quite a good browsing plant for the cattle. We do plant flax not too close to the streams, because if it floods then it can rip them out. And not too close to fences either, especially electric fences.
Yeah, they get the zap.
But they're a great plant, just in the right place.
Not to malign the lovely pigs we have here in front of us, but people often associate pigs as quite a dirty animal. Obviously they turn up the root around in the mud, and they get a little bit dusty and muddy sometimes. How do you manage that with wanting to look after the waterways and things like that on the farm?
This time of year is obviously the most challenging. When the ground is wet, they have a very strong instinct just to start digging away at it. So we have a lot of trees on the property, and it's not that infrequently that a branch comes down, or sometimes a whole tree comes down, or we need to do some clearing. So we have a constant supply of wood chip. We use the wood chip in the areas that the pigs are running up and down the fence line, or where we feed them. It helps to reduce the amount of mud. It's nice and soft on their trotters, but it also helps to absorb some of the nitrogen. So that's quite a nice natural intervention that we can just put in place. And we try and rotate them as well through the paddocks so that they don't get too overdone.
It seems like quite a low input operation, in the sense that there's a lot of that you can supply from on farm already, as you say, from the tree branches or the flax bushes, the purposes they serve, and the fruit that you grow and things like that. Was that quite intentional part of the operation?
Very much so. This farm was actually run as an organic property for about 15 years, I would say. It might even been a bit longer than that. And so the inputs that have been added to the property in terms of fertiliser have all been natural products. Since we've moved on, we've been focusing on just balancing soil minerals. We don't add any nitrogen, a bit of slow release phosphorus, and that's really it. But you can see with the amount of produce we're bringing into the pig areas, that's actually quite a bit of nutrient that's coming into these areas. So we soil test the areas that have pigs in them separate to the rest of the property. And soil quality and health is a really big part of the way that we're farming, so we can grow good grass and we're not losing nutrients into our waterways.
Do you rotate the pigs with the cattle that you run as well? Or?
We do run cattle in these areas too. It's good to reduce the amount of weeds that come up. If you don't graze areas properly, then you will get areas becoming more weedy, and we're still refining that, and we're constantly learning as we go.
And they'll eat down a lot of the tougher grass that the pigs don't eat as well. I think a lot of people don't realise how much grass that pigs will browse on as well, actually.
Maintaining a low environmental footprint while maximising the land they do have is a key reason the couple have also gone down the route of agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics is the practice of simultaneously using land for solar energy production and agriculture, such as growing crops or grazing stock beneath the solar panels. Perhaps unusually in this example, about a dozen heifers, young cows that have not yet had their first calf, graze and rest beneath solar panels across 3 hectares of the farm. What mix are you running here?
So
Hereford cross?
Yeah, Hereford Friesian cross. We get most of our cattle from Jensen's up round near Warkworth, and they raise beautiful, really tame, calm animals. We do have a few other bitses in here, but yeah, majority of our herd is Friesian Hereford cross.
And you've chosen heifers, I presume, partly because of their nature, just
It just makes things easier. We do actually have 4 steers at the moment. One of them's a rig, and so that kind of reminds us of the reason why it's a little bit easier to just keep the heifers. Obviously, we've had a bit of rain this morning, and they tend to shelter under here when it's been raining, but also on hot sunny days. And even right now, like, it's stopped raining, the sun's coming out, but they still choose to just camp underneath there. So it's worked really well for us. This summer and autumn was really dry, and we actually noticed the grass was greener under the panels as well, so we're getting less evaporation. That's something I quite like to measure, is the soil moisture between the areas that have panels and those that don't. These animals would be about the largest that we would put under the panels. They're getting close to 200 kg.
Yeah, so we've been running the farm now, well, the solar farm's been, about a year and a half now since it's been active?
Yep.
And we're still figuring out exactly, but yeah, we're running them, the R1s, through until they're about a year old, or about 200 kgs or something.
How tall are these solar panels, I suppose, given that and that you are running cattle? They're what, about 2?
Taller than most.
Taller than most, yeah.
So that was developed in conjunction with light years, and aiming for them to be 1.6 metres off the ground at the pivot point there where the tilting panels. That said, some of them are much higher, but unfortunately in a few places they're also a bit lower, just with the undulating ground. So as when we first get the young cattle on, about sort of 4 months old or something, 4 to 6 months old, they're fine to run through the whole thing. And then as they get a bit bigger, we just start fencing some of them off, some of the panels off, that they're a bit more perhaps susceptible to damage or having wires chewed or anything like that.
Because how much of the farm is in solar panels, and how many solar panels do you have?
So we've got about 3 hectares under solar panels. You'd have to ask Matt how many solar panels there are.
There's a few thousand.
I'm not sure about that.
So we've got 3 hectares of panels. They're divided up into 2 cells, which we've labelled sort of the eastern block and the western block. We're currently in the western block, and then we just subdivide those blocks with temporary fencing and roll them through. We just let the light years know where they're at, and they just lock the panels flat.
Lots of lovely long lush grass in the moment.
It's been a little while since we ran cattle under here. We actually combined our mobs into one mob about 2 months ago.
Investing in such infrastructure can be costly. Nigel and Merrin have partnered with Light Years Solar and leased their land to the company which built and manages the panels.
It's on a lease basis. We own the land and lease the land out to Light Years, and they pay us a lease for the area. But we've got a very good arrangement with them in that it still feels like it's part of the farm that we can use, So we have to be mindful about the type of stock we run under the panels, obviously. We're very cautious about anything that could cause any damage. Particularly, I think the main risk is really them getting into cables and chewing cables.
Leases are just CPI adjusted every year, and then there's also a profit share mechanism built in there as well, that if their revenue from the farm punches above a certain amount, then we...
With the power, is the farm power operated as well? Like, are you guys able to draw from this, or it all goes back into the grid and their supply?
It goes back into the grid at the moment, but they have dropped off a small transformer so that they can provide us with power for the farm and for the house. So that's something that we've been working on together.
Need another few months and we'll hopefully have that all wired in.
Something that we're certainly keen on is reducing the carbon footprint of the property. I would actually like to get it not just neutral but carbon sink, and I think we're there with all the trees we've got already. So anything that we can do to reduce reliance on externalities, it's a bonus for us. We harvest rainwater from our shed so we can use that for wash down. We've got amazing bore water around here, and that really needs to go for drinking water and not just being used for cleaning. So there's small things like that we're implementing. But it's a constant process of checking in and seeing what you can do next.
The Waiuku farm is the first of several set up and operated by Light Years Solar. Even on a drizzly grey day, it's generating power. Co-founder and managing director Matt Shanks explains.
This was the first one we've built and operate. Yeah, we've had a couple of sites prior to this where we've done the development and design and consenting. The first one was up near Dargaville called the Nomai Solar Farm, which was on was about a 5 or 6 hectare support block. that we purchased off a farmer up there and developed that.
You've got one down in Wairarapa, and is there one also in the South Island from memory?
Yeah, we have a site in just outside Masterton, the Waingawa Solar Farm, and another one in Ashburton on the south side there in Willoughby.
And can you tell me a little bit about the setup here on this farm in Waiuku, and how many solar panels and what their kind of output is?
Yeah, this is what's called a single axis tracking system, most of it, so it follows the sun across the course of the day. One of the reasons we did that is it works better with the livestock, because we can put the panels flat, which you can see right now, which gives a bit more headroom for the young, the calves. And Nigel actually did some experiments before we started with some bamboo poles he'd put out around the paddocks here. Do you remember that?
Yeah, to see how high we needed to jack them up, basically, to be able to run the cattle underneath.
Yeah, so we determined that the critical height for calves was 1.6 metres. That's sort of lick up to. That's how far they go with their tongue. So everything in the solar array here is well, all the sensitive parts are higher than that. There's about I think it's 2,800 panels we've got here, and the output is about 2.4 megawatts or 2,400 kilowatts. So that's enough to powers about 700 homes in the Waiuku area.
And obviously today's a little bit of a grey, slightly wet day, so probably not the best day for a solar farm visit. But can you talk me through, even on a day like today, what they might be putting out?
Yeah, it's running right now. It's about 25%, and the sun's at its almost at its lowest angle in the sky. So normally this time of year we would get up to around 50-60% production over the middle of the day when the sun's at its highest, and then obviously, going into summer, that the days get longer and the sun gets higher.
What is the lifespan of a kind of solar farm like this, or of these panels? Like, how long would you expect them to be able to be in use for?
We expect 35 years, and without having to replace the panels. They're warranted for something like 25, 30 years, and they kind of age a little bit and decline in their production. So even at 35 years, they'll output about 85% of what they're doing today. So that's still pretty good. There's obviously maintenance regime that goes along with it to make sure they last that long. So we're learning more and more about that. There's more maintenance involved in a tracking system like this than in a fixed mount system that doesn't move.
Agrivoltaics is part of a growing trend. While solar power could make up 6% of Aotearoa's energy by 2035, suitable land is limited. Agrivoltaics allows for dual land use on farm.
And I think Nigel and Merrin and Judy have really been pioneering and accommodating here. I think this is probably the first large agrivoltaic set up in New Zealand, and certainly learned a few things along the way. Anecdotally and from observation at this and some of our other solar farms, we kind of think that there's a slight uptick in pasture growth with the solar, and I don't know if that's sort of a greenhouse type effect or kind of shading underneath the panels in the hotter months, but
definitely noticeable over the drought period we had that this was the greenest grass on the farm, easily. Yeah, everything browned off big time, but it was still just noticeably better here under the panels.
For farmers, agrivoltaics can also help diversify and make their business more profitable. Most importantly for the Upchurches, it aligns with the couple's values.
It's limited what we can do with that 3 hectares. We obviously can't run our larger cattle through the area. And one other limitation we've really yet to address is how we actually spread fert in here. Now there's all of the panels on because we can't get a big truck in anymore, and of course it'll probably just end up coating the panels anyway, so we're going to need a bit of a hopper and do it in smaller loads on the back, which will be a bit more time consuming. Wonderful to still be able to run the young cattle through.
It's actually made the farm more profitable as well, so the whole voltaics has allowed us to have that dual land use.
Per hectare, this is now the most profitable part of the farm, combined with being able to run the cattle underneath it.
Yeah, and we did that analysis before we went too far down this avenue to see what we could earn off this area of land with cropping or dairy grazers or alternate land uses, and this was by far the most favourable. It aligns with our values as well, so it's something that we were really interested to explore.
That was Merrin and Nigel Upchurch I was speaking to at Waitangi Farm in Waiuku, near Auckland. You also heard from Matt Shanks of Lightyear Solar and woofers Tommy Falconer and Tilly Milson. And that's this week's Country Life. Thanks for joining us. You can also find photos and more information about the stories in this episode in our show notes. We love getting your feedback and ideas for future stories. You can reach us country@rnz.co.nz.
We'd hate for you to miss an episode of Country Life. To get every episode free to your phone, click follow on your app now. And if you enjoy our show, give us a shout on social media or tell a friend by clicking the share button in this app.
Out in the field today were myself and Sally Round.
The show was produced and engineered by David Knowles and Phil Benj. Ka kite.
Catch you next time.